This One's Wife, Markle versus Markle. Harriet Alexander writes in the Mail Online, Samantha Markle arrives in Florida court as her half-sister, this one's wife, tries to get defamation case dismissed. Judge indicates decision will be in the coming days. Thus, the wait continues for Samantha Markle to determine whether her case can proceed, and if it does, the compulsion of discovery against her sister. What is it, however, with the way that a narcissist deals with litigation? Commonly, narcissists use litigation, the use of lawyers, the sending of a legal letter, and possibly the commencement of proceedings, as you'd anticipate, as a means to assert control over people. There are certain narcissists who are highly litigious, particularly those that are wealthy. Often the litigiousness of the narcissist can be split into two separate camps. There are those that are wealthy and therefore can hire expensive lawyers that can blitzkrieg the opponent into submission, causing them to back down or come to the settlement table and accept unfavorable terms because of the economic firepower of the narcissist. They hire a top firm with a cohort of lawyers, and the opposition simply cannot afford to compete with them on a level playing field. And therefore, notwithstanding the legitimacy of their position, they are effectively browbeaten legally into submission, which enables the narcissist to either assert control over that individual or nullify a threat to control through the use of lawyers. The second camp that the highly litigious narcissist falls in are those that can't afford lawyers and go it themselves, often becoming what's known as a vexatious litigant. Operating through their delusion, they believe that they are entitled to something. A common example is that they've applied for a job and they believe that they've been discriminated against when no such discrimination took place, and they launch proceedings believing that they should be entitled to financial recompense. They become a bee in the bonnet of local institutions as they repeatedly bring claims. I recall an instance where I was talking to a friend who was a lawyer, and he recounted an instance of an opponent who had simply acted in person. This individual was a director of a company, and he had claimed that his telecommunications company had interfered with his telecommunications, resulting in a loss of money. There was no such interference, and even if there had, it wouldn't have been viable in terms of demonstrating that it would cause the losses that he was complaining about. Why? The company was tanking anyway. It was a claim which had no basis in law, no basis in fact. It was completely unmeritorious. But that didn't stop this director, the sole director, commencing proceedings against the telecommunications company. Thereafter was something which was very much a shaggy dog story, and the litigation rumbled on. At first, the individual didn't do anything to proceed with the claim, and the defendant sought security for their costs because they recognised that his company was insolvent. He failed to supply that security but didn't move the case forward. It was eventually struck out. Some 15 months later, he sought to have it resurrected, and there followed 3 hearings at which a decision was made as to whether the claim ought to be reinstated. It was not. He then appealed against that, and in so doing brought proceedings to suggest that the lawyer, my friend, acting on behalf of this company, had lied in a witness statement. That application was dismissed. He appealed against it. He sought leave to appeal against the substantive decision not to reinstate his claim. That was dismissed. He was racking up costs against him, costs that he would not pay, and on it went. I bumped into my friend a number of years later and asked about that particular case. It amused me, and I asked, was it still carrying on? And he said, oh yes. He said, I'm not actually involved in it anymore. The company essentially had no further involvement once the claim had been dismissed, and therefore didn't need to appear at any of the hearings. But the individual concerned, he then started to suggest that one of the judges was corrupt, and he had the police investigate that, saying that he tampered with a recording of a tape. He had then suggested that the police didn't investigate it properly. He then brought claims involving the Information Commissioner, and on it went. Organisation after organisation that was all brought into this claim, which had spiralled. The claim itself, the original claim, had no merit whatsoever, and the reason the claim was struck out was as a consequence of the behaviour of this director. The company that sought to sue, it went bust, and he failed to tell the court to send correspondence to a different address. So it kept sending correspondence to the registered address, so he was never notified about the claim being struck out, and thus delayed in resurrecting it. It was his fault. He brought it on himself. It was his company, yet he could not accept this. And it was clear in these tales that had been relayed to me by my friend that this individual was a narcissist, that he could not accept that he was the one that was at fault, and it was everybody else's fault. The telecommunications company, the directors of that telecommunications company, the lawyer acting for the telecommunications company, the judge that had overheard a number of the hearings, the police for their incompetence in dealing with it, the Information Commissioner not providing information when they ought to have done so, other judges, on and on it went. The typical behaviour of a narcissist. And he was cutting his nose off to spite his face with the collateral consequences as he was racking up cost bill after cost bill after cost bill against him. Naturally, if my friend the lawyer had recognised that his opponent, who was acting in person, was a narcissist, he may well have offered different advice to the company that he was representing. But the point is, that is a rather tortuous example of the way that a narcissist who has no money and cannot afford lawyers continues to tie other people up in their litigation, all because of the need to pursue that control and nullify the threat to control posed by the opposition not giving him what he wants. You may well have come across such individuals who clog up the courts with their nefarious and unmeritorious claims, and any of you who are watching who may be lawyers may well have come across such individuals. Thus, that's the situation with a narcissist who brings a claim. But what about the narcissist that has a claim brought against them, which is the case with this one's wife? Well, understandably so, it's a threat to control and it must be nullified. In some instances, the narcissist simply ignores the court case, ends up with a judgment against them, and evades enforcement until such time as the other person just gets fed up and stops trying to enforce the judgment, or the judgment is enforced, and goods are taken, money is garnished, etc., to enable that person to satisfy the judgment. What you need to bear in mind is that if ever you take legal action against a narcissist, you must ensure that you have a good cause of action, that the evidence supports your claim beyond the balance of probabilities, that the opponent has the ability to pay where you're seeking a monetary outcome. And then what you do is you ensure that you don't allow them any continuances, adjournments, extensions. You use the law to press them until such time as you get the judgment. Because on the basis that you have a good cause of action, the evidence supports your claim, you will win. The narcissist will wriggle. The narcissist will lie. The narcissist may even fabricate documentation. But unless you're up against a greater, which the vast majority of you will not be, and instead you'll be up against a lesser or mid-range narcissist, they will eventually fuck up. They'll either not turn up, so a judgment in default is entered against them, or their defence is struck out as a failure to appear, or the evidence that they put forward can be dismantled, resulting in a judgment being obtained by you following a trial. Yes, it's a pain in the backside to have to go through with it, but if you want to secure that outcome and your opponent is a narcissist, you must use the law to get there. Otherwise, the narcissist will just wriggle, obstruct, delay, in order to nullify the threat to control that is posed. The narcissist may well bring their own counterclaim against you to try and dissuade you from proceeding with your claim against them. They may well bring various applications or motions to try and dismiss your claim. And of course, that is the case that has happened with this one's wife. Samantha Markle's claim against her threatens her sense of control. Each time that she receives communication about this, either from the court or from her attorneys, it threatens the sense of control that this one's wife has, resulting in her needing to nullify it. Each time this case is mentioned, it ignites her fury, and she has to nullify it, either by complaining about it to Harry, complaining about it to her attorney, maybe even instructing the attorney to file a motion to dismiss, etc. But every time it rears its head, it presents as a threat to control which she must deal with. The Mail reports that the estranged half-sister of this one's wife was in court in Florida on Wednesday to try and secure a trial in her defamation case against the Duchess. Samantha Markle, aged 58, claims that her 42-year-old half-sister defamed her in her 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview and her 2022 Netflix series. Samantha, whose father Thomas married this one's wife's mother Doria after she and her brother Thomas were born, claims that the Duchess of Sussex implied she is an imposter, a deceptive opportunist, and a charlatan in her interviews. She is seeking damages in excess of $75,000, naturally a claim of monetary recompense against a narcissist will threaten the narcissist's sense of control, particularly one who's so greedy as this one's wife. It's based upon claiming that this one's wife's remarks caused her to lose sales of her book, The Diary of Princess Pushy's Sister, and caused her professional and social harm. Peter Ticktin, Samantha's lawyer, claimed that his client, who suffers from multiple sclerosis and uses a wheelchair, has been harassed since this one's wife's interviews and fears to leave her house. Michael Kump, this one's wife's lawyer, said that Samantha's case was baseless and none of this one's wife's statements were libelous. This has always been a lawsuit in search of a viable claim, said Kump, who also represents the Kardashian family. The case has failed because it runs headfirst up against defamation law and the First Amendment. The case was initially brought in March 2022 and dismissed in March this year. The judge, in March, found that this one's wife was simply expressing an opinion about her childhood and her relationship with her half-sibling. Samantha is now trying one more time to bring the case to trial in Florida. Judge Charlene Honeywell, overseeing the case, is expected to decide whether to proceed to trial in the coming weeks. Speaking to reporters outside court, Samantha Markle said she was optimistic about the prospects of a trial. I think the truth stands on its own, so I'm optimistic and thankful that we have a justice system that gives us the chance to present the facts, she told the US Sun. She said she was hurt by this one's wife, claiming they were not close as children, but told Fox 13, people change, they have agendas, they have other things influencing their lives. It doesn't change reality. Well, in actual fact, it is correct that this one's wife has an agenda. It is the pursuit of the prime aims. She hasn't changed, although she may have acted differently in her childhood, likely being better predisposed towards her half-sister. That was because at the time her half-sister fulfilled a need with regard to necessarily being controlled, that she would provide fuel, character traits and residual benefits. Of course, as I've explained to you on multiple occasions, because this one's wife has moved into a different strata of individuals that are in her life, she no longer needs to engage with her half-sister. Thus she is disengaged from her and has made the comments about her that she has. Nevertheless, the presence of this lawsuit is a pain in the neck for this one's wife, and she needs to kick it into touch because it is a threat to control. It strikes me that Samantha Markle has something of an uphill struggle, but if she does succeed, not only will that infuriate this one's wife, it means that there will be a move to disclosure, resulting in the provision of materials which could cause further problems for this one's wife. This one's wife, though, isn't thinking about what comes next. She is governed by looking at it in the here and now, namely, the suggestion that she's done something wrong and should pay her sister offends her need for control, and therefore she must reject it. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.